Hey everybody, it's Pat Jones, and it's time for another Turf Zoom brought to you by our friends at the Aquatrols Company. Speaking of the Aquatrols Company, very happy to have Matt Fleetwood with us here today. Matt, how are you?
I'm doing great, Pat. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. I am delighted that I don't have the job you have, which is essentially running R&D and tech services for the Aquatrols Company. How the heck did you end up doing this?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's more fun than it sounds, honestly. I actually got I started at University of Missouri. I was going to be a corn breeder and a soybean breeder, and get into genetics. And I did that for a little bit, and I realized that that is not what I wanted to do for the rest of my life. And then I found turfgrass, and that's something I started diving into. Went to grad school in turfgrass, and my focus was truly on soil surfactants from my master's and into my PhD. So my whole focus was soil surfactants and just the whole scope of soil surfactants on the market, because with soil surfactants currently, there was a notion beginning was, is everything the same? Do they perform the same? So what my goal was is look at all 40 to 45 different wetting agents or soil surfactants that were on the market at that time and try to determine, what does this product do? Does it help you move water? Does it help retain? And so I finished my PhD regarding all around soil surfactants, which is a little niche, but it got me into the role with Precision Labs.
Right.
So at Precision Labs, I became the technical product manager, doing everything from our soil surfactant line in through our adjuvant line, and of that nature. And so when we merged with Aquatrols, I moved into this R&D and technical services role, more focusing on our R&D process, creating our process, and bringing our products from an idea phase into something that was usable for our end users, and not only usable, but a solution for our end users.
Right. We spend a lot of time in the weeds talking about, okay, does this wetting agent do this? Is it a push me? Is it a pull you? And blah, 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 blah. But maybe today it would be nice if we step back from that and just talked about the bigger question of how golf uses water and how we can use technologies and information to do that even better in the future. That's kind of what you wake up every day thinking about. What if you could change the world and make golf more aware of what we need to do to continue to have access to water and to use it wisely and well? What are some things you would tell students and other people in the industry?
Yeah, I think water has always been a hot button topic for many years of recently, and it's only getting more of a spotlight now. And what you're seeing out in the industry, in our golf industry, is that sources of water and the water that people are using fluctuates on the quality of it. What are you applying in your irrigation water and your spray water? And ultimately, what we need to understand is water is a limited resource. And so water is obviously one of our most precious resources. It's been something that is in the spotlight for many years and is getting more so in the spotlight as we progress into the future. And a lot of people look at golf courses as places that water is wasted, right? But what we look at it as is golf courses really do try to reuse some of their water and maximize the water that they are using. And really how the Aquatrols Company wants to work into that is being a water partner and helping to manage water throughout that entire process, not only from when it's in your soil, which is kind of what it was our bread and butter. That's what brought us to the dance, is managing water within the soil. But through this merger and through just a greater understanding of what we need to do with the water, we can manage your water at the source, in your lakes, where you're pulling it from, what type of water you're getting, and then through the entire process, right? Not only through irrigation, but also through your spray water. What is your pH, right? Where people and what water people are using, you're almost forced to use that water. You need to deal with it, because you really almost can't change your source, right? So we can manage and help manage your water through when it gets into the tank, to through that spray and onto that target, and maximizing the use of your water on your property.
Yeah, I mean that makes complete sense. And so give me some for examples when you look at like how can we make the water better at the source and then through the process? What are some examples of how companies like yours can do that?
100%. So one of the main ways and one of the main products that we really focus on is water quality at the source, right? Addressing sediment that's floated, that is settled at the bottom, that's then also releasing nutrients, right? Creating these algae blooms and creating some of those unappealing ponds that you drive by sometimes on golf courses or just around, right? So addressing those living organisms from algae and some of that other bacteria within that source, we can manage that, reduce the sediment of the lake, what's floating in the lake, and all of those other dead organic materials that end up leading to other issues such as weeds and different levels of nutrition being off within your source, right? And
So
as
clean. So number one is clean it up at the source.
100%, right? Clean it up at the source. Assure that what you're pulling from is the best it possibly can be with what you can do to it, because there's some things that you can't do ultimately at the source. What you can then do once you start pulling it from your source, you clean up that water, like you said, and you get it into your tank. There's other things that we can help you with to manage that pH of the water, your water hardness, some of the bicarbonates in there, right? If you couldn't address those at the source and clean it up, as you said, at the source, well, then once you start putting that into your tank, we have certain things that can help with managing your pH with pH acidifiers, pH buffers, or even water conditioners that help to bind some of those heavy metal ions or hard water ions and hardness that you have in your tank. Then as you get it spraying out from that nozzle, we've gotten it right at the source. We have that cleanup at that source. We've got it right in the tank, and now it needs to get sprayed out onto the turf. And the biggest thing here is drift, right? Drift and moving away. What we want to do is limit drift and maximize how much is getting to your target, right? So we have products like Border 2.0 that help to maximize that delivery of whatever you're spraying to the target, making sure that you don't have any water or spray going where you don't want it to be.
Right.
And then
For a whole bunch of reasons,
yes,
including to make sure you get value for the investment you've made in that plant protection product.
100%, right? You're putting a lot of effort and labor and monetary value into that tank, and you want to assure that you're getting the maximum performance out of it when it's getting onto that target, right? So more so than just controlling that water, right? You want to control and maximize the performance out of that product, and we can do that by getting more to that target. And then not lastly actually, but on that surface, on that leaf surface, water tends to just sit like a droplet, right? Everybody has kind of had water beat up on their table and they see that nice droplet form, right? Well, on leaves, we don't want that droplet. We want to maximize the coverage of it on the leaf, right? And so water naturally doesn't want to do that. So by some of the products that we put in from the start in that tank and onto the target, right? Like other non-ionic surfactants, Penetrate Eco being a great one, right? Where you can use it. It's OMRI certified and use it around aquatics. What that helps do is spread that water droplet and allow for a better, easier penetration of whatever you're spraying to maximize that spray and maximize that potential of whatever you're spraying. And then lastly, what we can do is we covered it from at that source, cleaning it up at the source throughout that spray event, right? Really managing the total spray droplets within that whole spray process. And then lastly, kind of what brought us to the dance, right? Which we started with a little bit ago is soil surfactants, managing that water within the soil,
moisture management.
Exactly, right? Managing it and getting uniformity. I think ultimately too, some things with water is we want it to be uniform across our surface. We don't want these ebbs and flows of volumetric water content all around. And we can help do that, right? And we can also help manage how you move your water or how you utilize your water within your soil, right? And so that's kind of the all-encompassing, how we want to help manage water.
So when you step back and you think about the bigger picture, what's the most important thing do you think that most superintendents need to understand or to begin to try to do more of in their beginning to end water use process? What's one thing you would love to see change the most?
So it's funny when I ask a similar question when I give presentations, and if you ask everybody who tests their soils, right? Who tests their soils? Usually most hands go up, right? If you ask people how many people test their water or their spray water, do you know what you're starting at? You have probably a third or a fourth of the people that just raised their hands for testing their soil, right? And so, one of the biggest things that I think could be implemented more is testing your water and understand where you're starting from, right? Test the water at the source, test the water in your spray tank, and through that process, because ultimately, for you to take your water where you want it to be to maximize that spray, you need to know where it starts. If you don't know where it starts, what levels of pH you're at, what's your water hardness, your bicarbonates, then you don't know the steps to take to get it to where it needs to be. So for me, I think testing water and understanding where you're at, right? And testing it throughout the year, because in the spring, when that snow melts, that water is high, right? Things may be a little more diluted, but as we're pulling water out of that pond or whatever source it is, it will change over the year, right? It could get lower and you could get more concentrated. Things could get more worked up in that source. So understand your water, and not only understanding it once, understand it throughout the year and how it changes from spring into the fall. And that really does then culminate all of those aspects, right? From cleaning at the source and then going through the rest of the process.
What do you think the biggest misconception is about wetting agents? Because there's always been this, some people who are 100% in, and then there's people who are skeptical or whatever. What do you think the misconceptions are about using wetting agents as a fundamental part of your program?
Yeah, I truly, I think going back to what I said a little earlier, was that all of these wetting agents are the same, right? That has been the stereotypical since I started looking at it in grad school, and even back on some old studies that have been done. These products are all the same, right? But we know that's not true based on one, the formulations that we build and the active ingredients within there, we know what they do. And two, we've seen the performance not only within trials, but within our end users. They gravitate to certain products because they either help them manage water differently in moving their water, right? So they can accept more water, or in some instances, some individuals want to maintain more and hold it at a higher water content, get more water conservation, and we have other products for that as well, right? So this notion of all of these things are the same, they do the same thing, that's, I think, one of the biggest misconceptions. Is we've grown so much in this industry, right? And it's if you this industry has really been around for 50, 60, 70 years, right? I mean, Aquatrols was the initiation of this industry, right? And so if you
Correct.
think
Yep.
about it, 70 years is still a pretty young industry to be learning and advancing, right? So we've learned and advanced dramatically from this, when this kind of started becoming a concept earlier on in the 90s and in the early 2000s. And I think it's still a concept that's out there, but more people understand that certain products do certain things, right? And we can design a soil surfactant with the function in mind of how we want to help influence your water.
What do you think is the most underutilized category in terms of the various surfactants and wetting agents out there? Which one do you think is sort of the one that needs to have a light shined on it a little bit more?
You know, it's interesting. I think that's a hard question to answer, because what we're seeing now is, so with Aquatrols too, we utilize certain raw ingredients in various products, right? And a lot of them were just that general product. And as we've developed in this industry, we started to realize that combining some of these products that have different functions, like an APG, which helps to quickly wet and will move with your wetting front, doesn't have a lot of holding capacity, but you talk about getting that uniform distribution of water, that's what's going to help you do that, right? And APGs will also help reduce the watering in time for some of these products that some of our block copolymers, which are truly the backbone of these
Mhm.
products, right, which is really helping manage water and manipulate water in different ways. The combination of these two things is really where you get your best products, because these surfactants have different uses. So I think those two that I kind of mentioned are utilized widely without. And we have some others that we're working on that I think will be very interesting for the industry here coming up soon.
Oh,
But I think it's more understanding more unique combinations of how these products are synergistic with each other, quite frankly.
yeah. So when you think about the end-to-end water management process, uh, why is that so important to superintendents? Because I hear a lot of folks changing out their irrigation systems because they want to be more sustainable, right? They want to conserve, but they also want to use the what they have wisely. Why is this end-to-end approach that the Aquatrols Company has so important?
Because through this process, sometimes people forget about how water how water is impacting all of the steps, right? I think people don't always realize that what you're when we're spraying things, it's a majority of water, right? And that water is going to dictate kind of how all those things perform. So by understanding how we can influence and how your water affects that whole process and understanding it from start to finish, we can holistically help build programs for you to maximize that water within anything that you're doing, right? And we can help fine tune your system to really truly build that program to maximize what your situation is for the water you're dealing with.
Very good. Final question. So if you could wave a magic wand and you could eliminate one problem that has just been a ginormous issue for turf managers and superintendents over the years, what do you think that number one water management issue is that you'd love to just wipe off the face of the earth?
It's interesting. I think more and more in this affluent water, affluent water, affluent water is now becoming more and more common because access to water is becoming more and more limited, right? And again, going back to that notion of golf courses are just wasting water, right? So we've started to now try to collect all this water of what we're using and use this affluent water, but ultimately, right, that is affluent water is a very, very hard place to start, right? When we're talking about the source, it's a hard place to start, and we can help manage that, right? But I think the biggest thing, if I could wave my wand, right, is that everybody has perfect water, right? Because then that just makes everything down the stream so much easier, right? But if everyone had perfect water, then we wouldn't be able to come in and help you kind of solve those things, right? So it works for us, but if I had to wave a magic wand, I think having good sources of water for all of our customers across the not only the US but globally would be the biggest thing I would say.
Okay. Well, I this has been an ambitious discussion. I really enjoyed kind of getting bigger picture, and I hope you'll come back and talk more about new products and things because you hinted at a few things as we move forward. But Matt Fleetwood, you're off the hook. Thank you very much for joining us for Turf Soon, and we look forward to learning more from you in the future.
Well, thank you, Pat. We really appreciate you giving us this platform to kind of to speak to these things, and I can't wait to get on again.
Oh, we'll have you back for sure. Thank you very
Perfect.
much. And
Perfect.
all of y'all make sure and stay tuned for another Turf Zoom coming soon from the Aquatrols Company.